Hello everybody, I'm Jackson Ebsage, and this is part 2 of our dive into the rise, fall, and rise again of the prequel trilogy. If you haven't seen part 1, you can find a link in the description, but with that out of the way, let's continue. By the end of 2005, the hubbub around the prequels had died down, solidifying in the public consciousness as a net negative. Those who enjoyed the saga found themselves in the minority, as they subsisted off the paltry number of prequel stories which existed at this time. Unfortunately for them, this would be the state of the Clone Wars era for the next several years, as large releases developing this period in Star Wars history were few and far between. But that isn't to say that the future was all doom and gloom. While fans didn't know it yet, an animated series smack dab in the middle of the Clone Wars had already entered pre-production. This project was first referenced at Star Wars Celebration 3 in 2005, where George Lucas teased the show, saying, "We are working on a 3D continuation of the pilot series that was on the Cartoon Network." Aside from this casual and uninformative mention, the project was kept under tight lock and key, with next to no information being released to the public, a trend which would continue throughout 2006. While this lack of information may have led to the illusion that little was being done on the project, reality couldn't have been further from the truth. Behind the scenes, a team of animators was working hard to finish the show's first few seasons, with a then relatively unknown 30-something-year-old named Dave Filoni at the helm. Come spring of 2007, details on the series would finally arrive. The show, dubbed Star Wars: The Clone Wars, wouldn't just be an expanded look into the story of Anakin Skywalker, but a wider and more diverse look into the Clone Wars as a whole. Teasers, promos, character reveals, and trailers would all hit the scene in the following months, sparking conversation and whetting fans' appetites for what was to come. But although the animation was eye-catching and the visuals sparky, neither came close to being the most intriguing or promising aspect of this yet unreleased show. Those awards easily went to the Clone Wars' very nature as the first truly serialized and truly episodic piece of story-driven Star Wars media to air within the structure of a television show. This untested formula seemed to have immense potential from the get-go, as it might allow for deeper character exploration which could play out over a longer period of time, a luxury the prequel trilogy wished it had had. Though the fans didn't know it at the time, Dave Filoni was actually 5 steps ahead, with this and more already on his mind. And in the summer of 2008, the series would finally receive a premiere date of August 15th. But instead of airing on television, this TV show would actually begin its life in a theater, with an hour-and-a-half special giving audiences their first taste. Thanks to the smaller draw of animation and the unprecedented nature of the film, the debut was surrounded by an air of mysticism, and easily the smallest premiere of any Star Wars movie yet, making a meager $68 million at the box office. And once the credits rolled, fans, audiences, and critics agreed that, as a film, it was relatively unremarkable, with the point A to point B story and simple characters seeming best fit for a kids' show. But although it may have been a mediocre movie, it served to be an excellent pilot and backdoor entrance to the series, which was just around the corner. So on the calm, cool, 60-degree Friday evening that was October the 3rd, 2008, Star Wars: The Clone Wars made its debut in a double feature on Cartoon Network. The 2 premiere episodes featured an eclectic mix of characters and locations, some of which were longtime staples of that era which audiences were familiar with, while others were untested creations of the show. The first episode, dubbed Ambush, followed Jedi Master Yoda as he helps a downtrodden group of clone troopers complete their mission, facing off against the clumsy but numerous forces of the droid army, and Count Dooku's Sith assassin, Asajj Ventress, a character who first appeared back in 2003 with Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. The second episode, Rising Malevolence, marked the start of the show's first 3-episode story arc, and showcased Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Anakin's young apprentice, Ahsoka Tano, as they work to rescue survivors who are stranded after being assaulted by a massive ship commanded by the sinister General Grievous. And from the moment the second episode ended, it seemed like the reviews were already wandering in, with glowing appraisals sourcing from every corner, as general audiences, hardcore fans, critics, and the network itself gave near-unanimously positive reviews, ensuring that this show wouldn't be going anywhere anytime soon. So for the next 20 weeks, Season 1 would roll out, with millions of families, mine definitely included, tuning to Cartoon Network on Friday nights to catch the next episode. and upon its conclusion in spring the following year, fans had 22 episodes to look back on, analyze, and appreciate. Dozens of standout moments, shots, sequences, and more sprung to the forefront of Star Wars-related discussions, popping up on forums and message boards, on schoolyards, and in living rooms. But what very well may have been the show's strongest aspect came hard from left field. Achieving something that the prequels just couldn't, the Clone Wars developed a competent cast of well-respected heroes and villains, and for the first time in nearly 30 years, Star Wars was hailed for great writing and character development. The master and apprentice duo of James Arnold Taylor's Obi-Wan Kenobi and Matt Lanter's Anakin was a perfectly written relationship that was half brotherly teasing and half genuine dichotomy. Matthew Woods would gloriously portray General Grievous as a sinister, cruel, and conniving warmonger who's ultimately out for himself, a character who contrasted flawlessly against Corey Burton's suave and collected take on Count Dooku. But not all of the accolades were reserved for veteran members of the cast. Anakin's young apprentice, Ahsoka Tano, was initially seen by some as a whiny and unnecessary addition, but by season's end, fans excitedly looked towards her bright future. Or take the clones, who first started off as copy-pasted nameless cannon fodder in Episode 2, and were now a wide, diverse group of individuals, with troopers like Echo and Fives gaining massive respect, although neither could truly compare to Captain Rex, a dual-wielding, quick-thinking soldier and Anakin's right-hand man, a fan favorite. Even the show's eclectic sidecast won their fair share of appraisal, with characters like the eponymous, legendary, cowboy hat-wearing, bounty-hunting space gunslinger Cad Bane and the clever, charismatic pirate lord Hondo Ohnaka developing their own cults. Suffice it to say that the positives blew the negatives out of the water and left fans more excited than ever for the inevitable future of the series. And for the next few years, the cycle was in some ways rinse and repeat. The show's team of animators would hone their craft and, under the direction of an increasingly celebrated Dave Filoni, would deliver a new season which would best its predecessor in nearly every way, exponentially raising the bar. But unfortunately, the series just wouldn't reach completion. After Disney's surprise acquisition of Lucasfilms in 2012, the series would find itself in the chopping block, with only the nearly completed 5th and 6th seasons being released over the subsequent 2 years. Several story reels would be left on the cutting room floor, and the show's axing prematurely ended several story arcs, leaving the fates of multiple main characters up in the air or on frustrating cliffhangers. Despite the Clone Wars' unfortunate and untimely cancellation, fans still had a whole 6 seasons and 121 episodes to look back on and appreciate. From within this massive catalog came plot threads which would be regarded as not only the best of the prequel era, but as some of the best stories to ever take place in the Star Wars universe. Take, for example, the show's reintroduction of Darth Maul. Although initially thought to have been killed by Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace, he would re-emerge as a vindictive powerhouse, fueled by an abiding hatred for Kenobi, becoming one of the most detailed and storied characters in the entire series. Other standouts include Ahsoka and Anakin's ultra-slow-burn plotlines, which unfolded throughout the show's entire life, and led to the redemption of Anakin's character and Ahsoka's tragic departure from the Jedi Order in Season 5's finale. But now, even with the show over, Star Wars found itself in the best place that it had been in decades. Almost single-handedly thanks to the Clone Wars, the franchise would enter a sort of second golden age, with plenty of new fans hopping aboard, and the franchise itself getting a bit of a facelift. And for the time being, this would largely be the status quo, with the series' public perception skyrocketing and a general appreciation for most things Star Wars increasing. It wasn't a coincidence either that the franchise's second wind was concurrent with the rapid rise of the internet. Ever since the days of the prequels in the early 2000s, fans had been sharing choice clips from that trilogy on forums and early internet websites such as Newgrounds and YouTube as sort of inside jokes. And now, some 10 years down the line, the internet had grown significantly and would voraciously chew through trends as it turned small jokes into viral sensations overnight. This, paired with the mammoth and loving fanbase of the prequel era, seemed like the perfect and predestined cocktail. And beginning in the mid to late 2010s, the internet prequel power couple exploded. What started as a small sect of Star Wars fans half-jokingly mocking the campiness of episodes 1, 2, and 3 would grow into a wildfire movement spurred on by hundreds of thousands who enthusiastically shared their love by turning their favorite lines, shots, and moments from the prequel era into jokes. And this humor wasn't just contained to episodes 1, 2, 3, and the Clone Wars show. Although that medium made up the bulk of it, many obscure pieces of the prequel era found their way into the mix. Video games like the 2005 tactical shooter Star Wars Republic Commando and the beloved Star Wars Battlefront 2 classic, also from 2005, spawned dozens of memes and jokes. Taking place nearly 4,000 years before the movies, the 2003 game Knights of the Old Republic and its 2004 sequel Knights of the Old Republic 2 are prequels by technicality and feature amazing characters and lovable dialogue which were eagerly embraced by the community. In addition to these, a load of other material had eyes looking its way, with everything from sourcebooks to TV spots being lovingly inducted into the prequel family, becoming the source of plenty of jokes and gags. But even with the Clone Wars and the boost in fame received by the virality of the internet, the prequel era still suffered from a bit of an image problem. To many older Star Wars fans, as well as casual audiences, episodes 1, 2, and 3 were seen as catastrophes which ruined the franchise. The Clone Wars itself was just a kid's show, and could never hold a candle to a movie with flesh and blood actors, and much of the supplemental material, like video games and comics, were completely overlooked. The final piece of the prequels puzzle was something which could help get audiences back into the franchise, while simultaneously showing them some of the great they were overlooking. And thanks to Disney, that piece would be provided. Between 2015 and 2019, a new Star Wars trilogy and a pair of spin-off films under the new Star Wars Anthology banner would be released. While this new sequel trilogy was seen by many as a colossal train wreck which lacked any sort of direction, it did draw the public eye back onto Star Wars, and unintentionally caused some to reinspect the prequels and wonder if they judged them just a bit too harshly. More importantly, though, were the two standalone films, or Star Wars stories, which debuted between sequel film releases. 2016 saw the premiere of Rogue One, a story which served to be the immediate predecessor to A New Hope. Met with largely positive reviews, the film worked wonders for the fanbase, providing a piece of familiar territory recognizable to older fans who dropped off the wagon after feeling alienated by the prequels in the early 2000s. From here, many of these estranged folks could return to the franchise and experience material they wouldn't have otherwise, including much of the expanded material from the prequels. With a new batch of eyes exploring this content, this niche era of Star Wars would, to some extent, break into the mainstream and begin to gain some long-deserved recognition from the general public. But if there was one moment to stand as an example for why the Clone Wars era deserved respect, it was undeniably the panel at San Diego Comic-Con 2018. Here, a board of veteran Clone Wars cast members sat down to discuss the titular series and its impact on the franchise. Toward the end of the panel, Dave Filoni himself would introduce a sort of gift to the fans, while also commemorating the Clone Wars' 10th anniversary. And in one of the most electrifying moments in the history of the franchise, this happened.
Special thank you, Dave. You have something to share with the fans, yes?
Yes, I do. Because I think that, it's an anniversary. It's been 10 years, and you guys deserve something for being so great. Present, if you will. And I think we got together. And we thought if there's one thing we could give you, what would it be? So here you go.
The name's Rex. Captain, sir. War does not come with a guarantee. No soldier gets the promise of safety.
My designation is Trooper 27-5555, sir.
We call him Fives.
I'm him.
This is Echo. I'm Commander Cody, your new boss.
Sir, yes, sir!
Looks like we got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Look around. We're one and the same. Same heart, same blood. Your training is in your blood. My blood's boiling for a fight.
This is our
season was still a long ways out, the Clone Wars and prequel fanbase had never been so strong, as the shockwaves left by this announcement rippled throughout the entire Star Wars community. Over the next year, more information about the show's final season would slowly be announced, including plot synopses, the number of episodes, and a tentative release date. And finally, on the 21st of February 2020, after over a year of waiting, Season 7, Episode 1 premiered. And by the time the credits rolled, it was evident that this just might be the best season the Clone Wars had ever seen, and this was only Episode 1 of 12. For the next 11 weeks or so, Season 7 would slowly roll out, with the trio of story arcs taking the audience on a tour of the galaxy. The first story arc dealt with individualism and showcased an eclectic mix of clone troopers, including the misfit task force known as the Bad Batch, as they undergo a rescue mission for a long-vanished clone. The second reunited us with the fan-favorite Ahsoka Tano and explored her life outside the Jedi Order, as she discovered what the Jedi mean to both your average citizens and to herself. But neither of them could really compete with the show's final arc, the Siege of Mandalore. Boasting the smoothest and most beautiful animation to ever grace the Clone Wars, Season 7's final 4 episodes would flaunt gorgeous shots, long-awaited reunions, iconic fan-favorite characters, and top-notch storytelling, the perfect concoction for a gratifying, memorable, and remarkably emotional ending fit for such a legendary show. In the days immediately following Season 7's conclusion, a sort of camaraderie was felt throughout the entire Star Wars fanbase, as the show's climactic ending was in many ways bittersweet. The feeling was only exacerbated within the niche prequel circle, as quite so many fans, myself included, felt the show's conclusion to be the end of an era which started in the early years of our childhood, making this final episode, aptly named Victory and Death, a sort of marker of a transitional period. With Season 7 said and done, now more than ever was the best time to look back and reflect. In the past 20-some-odd years, the prequels had released with hype, been cast aside, and risen like a phoenix after adopting a loving and ever-expanding fanbase. Sure, The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones are still considered mediocre at best, and Revenge of the Sith remains the franchise's black sheep, but the Clone Wars era has grown into its own, found its niche, and is now a praised aspect of the universe. Looking back on it all, it's interesting to see how both this real-world drama and the fictional events of the prequel era were in some ways sourced from a relatively simple and unassuming piece of exposition from the original movie way back in '77.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
I wish I'd known him.
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy. And a cunning warrior. I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself.
Well, that's all I've got for now, so thank you all so much for watching, especially if you've stuck around and seen parts 1 and 2. The Clone Wars is one of my favorite shows ever, and I've always been a huge fan of the Star Wars prequel era, and this was a long time coming, big project of mine. I've got some new stuff coming, hopefully in later August, I'd imagine, some interesting experimental stuff that I'm very, very excited about, and so excited to share with you all. So, until then, have a good one.